Good afternoon, everybody. It's Shawnee Boy here, coming at you live from the reservoir in Central Park. Now, today, I'm going to be talking to you guys about how the silver era bodybuilders were so strong. Now, as you remember, we had guys like Marvin Eater, Reg Park. All of these guys were amazing with the calisthenics. These guys were dipping 600, 500 pounds. They could do over 100 reps in a given set non-stop. Their cardiovascular respiratory systems were through the roof. These guys could bench over 4 or 5 plates. These guys were squatting 5+ plates. They could do 50 rep barbell squats with hundreds of poundages. How? Work capacity was through the roof. You might be saying, oh, testosterone was just high back then, which has contributed to their strength. You know, it might have contributed to some of their strength, but not all of it. You know, there was some skill involved. There was some innate inner strength that made them prowess compared to modern day bodybuilding with overdeveloped mass and capped shoulder development. So now, what I believe really put them over the top was their calisthenic work. Now, these guys apparently would train in the park for hours. This guy, Marvin Eater, could dip multiple human beings on his shoulders and back. How? Freak of nature, probably the strongest guy pound for pound in history as a natural. And yes, this guy, I think he competed in one show, but then he retired after that and then became a plumber in the city for some reason. You know, hey, the lifestyle would still go hand in with bodybuilding. It's all physical manual work. Keep on your feet all day. Good for him. Had a family, died I think in his 80s. But Reg Park, he was a Mr. America, man. He was all natural, but he was a godsend. He was born in South Africa. These guys ate clean foods, man. Fish, lots of milk, calcium, beef. They had oatmeal, lots of fruits as well. Orange juice, a lot of honey with they made a drink. The Silver Era Intro workout drink. It was lemon and honey. You get that vitamin C, the electrolytes, and you get the intra sugars and all of that, antioxidant powers of honey, you know, all good for blood flow and instant sugars and carbohydrates, which fuel performances and whatnot. And also, they were big on their organ meats. You know, they used to eat tons of organs back in the day. Nowadays, everyone looks like, oh, high cholesterol, bad for you, bad for your health. No, cholesterol is a precursor to testosterone, man, and it's essential for brain health. Come on now, you can't be shitting on cholesterol. That stuff is amazing for you. Of course, it might not be good for someone who's living a very sedative lifestyle, who maybe works like a 9 to 5 and doesn't really exercise because they're just getting all that cholesterol set, and then all that stuff builds up and then it turns into black and it blocks your arteries in the heart valve system, and then that screws you over and could cause heart disease, you know. But if you're exercising, you're actually using your cholesterol to fuel your growth and hormone production, then it's going to be useful. So that's why all of those organs and, you know, beef liver tablets, it's huge back then. So then that definitely propelled. So the nutrition back then was way more old school, and that was great for them. But that calisthenic work in the park, they were doing hundreds of reps and working out for hours in the park in the sunlight, and just building upon their tendon and ligament strength, which is one of the key things that is built through calisthenic movements. And I think that is one of the reasons why these guys were super strong, jack, and athletic, and could perform hundreds of reps. And you might be saying, okay, well, that's not necessary if your goal is pure muscle growth. But they grew in their free weight strength, their low rep work, and high rep work. So having phases where you do very, very high rep work above that quote-unquote hypertrophy benchmark of 5 to 30 reps, like going up above and beyond that, could just be great for building up extreme tendon and ligament strength and work capacity and just overall fundamental strength and mobility, yo. There's so much benefits to doing calisthenics out in nature. Just building that up puts you over the top. So I think that's what really made them stand out. You know, recovery was also key. These guys weren't training 6 days per week. Maybe when they were younger at certain points, but they were more known for full body workouts like Steve Reeves and all that. Yeah, so Steve Reeves as well. Huge on his calisthenics. But Marvin Eater, like those guys are like the long hidden gems. Marvin Eater did have very superior genetics. It's been noted, like he even said, I was born very innately strong, and he like just bust out long workouts in the park. but like the fundamentals and basics will get you a long way. Those purely compound movements, but in calisthenic, moving your own body weight through space is essential. Look at Franco Columbu, now moving on to the golden era. I mean, he obviously trained probably as natural during that silver era period before with Reg Park, but like he got on the stage with Arnold Schwarzenegger and whatnot. But this guy could hang upside down from his feet. That's an inverted dead hang. And that requires tons of core stability as well, and just lower body strength to just hold you up there, you know? Like, that's like a really hard thing just to hang from your feet, but it gives you tons of spinal extension and mobility and strength, which is crucial for, you know, developing your back to the biggest extent. And I will also say that, what else will I say that really made them stand out? Obviously their diet, recovery, their training, but their way of life, you know, they weren't obsessive with, you know, programming protocols, you know, their maximum recoverable volume. They'd push when it's time to push, and then they'd hold back when their body would tell them that it's time to hold back. So these guys were not OCD freaks like we have in today's modern society in bodybuilding. They did all angles. These guys did tons of different grips on all dips and pull-ups. These guys went behind their head. These guys went in the frontal and sagittal plane. And look at Leroy Colbert. This guy was an arms genius. This guy would do crazy bicep exercises to the sideways, behind his back. There's so many different angles to hit, and these guys were all about that. And nowadays, people just look blown up in the most obvious way in their traps and delts and bloated abs. These guys were symmetrical humans that were innately strong and good human beings, you know? I mean, those are probably the top 3 naturals of all time, man. Like Reg Park, Leroy Colbert, Marvin Eder. You can't get better than those guys. Marvin Eder was the stronger one, but Leroy Colbert, man, the 21-inch arms, it's a natural, bro. Crazy. You can't really beat that. Look at Eugene Sandow, Bronze Era, quoted the godfather of bodybuilding. This guy had a system called max Alding in his light dumbbell system where he'd do hundreds of reps with light weight, and was this just freak of a nature in terms of his strength. Could, like, when it was time to like man up and go to like a bench or do some crazy compound lift with a barbell, man would put up hundreds of pounds just by building up tons of work capacity and foundational tissue strength through the light dumbbells and very high reps. Builds up that bone strength and builds up that cardio, you know? And you're probably thinking, how's that cardio if he's just doing high reps with weights? Well, once you breach past that barrier of 30 reps, it's gonna be so taxing on your heart and your VO2 max just to intake all that oxygen and really just push. So yeah, you're gonna have to go above certain rep ranges if you really wanna just like develop innate strength. So do it. Another thing I will say is that these guys would actually do dedicated workouts just for one pure lift, like a dip day or something like that of that nature. You know, sometimes if Marvin Eder, like this guy, could bench over 500 pounds as a natural at under, like, I think just about 200 pounds or maybe even under that. This guy was a freak of nature, and he was under 6 foot. He was like between 5'7" to 5'9". And this guy would dedicate days to bench press, just a bench press day, or for his dip day. The dip was probably more extreme because he was a bodybuilder doing feats of calisthenic strength that's unheard of. So definitely that. But aside from that, yeah, so this extreme specification in certain calisthenic lifts put them over the top, and spend hours on that. Just puts them over the top in terms of their strength. And these old school guys would focus on the underlying strength of the musculoskeletal system, contrary to with modern bodybuilding, where they go to the machines to build the external layers of the muscle, right? And obviously that's what we want. We want to get jacked. But these guys would focus on musculoskeletal strength and proportion and what the tissue that's grown as a result of their work in that be their talking, you know? Nowadays, it's just extreme, externally layered focus bodybuilding and muscular emphasis development. And which is another thing with the pullover, you know, one of the greatest exercises of all time that many people neglect, and they now have suffering shoulder mobilities because they don't have good shoulder extension, because their spines and the thoracic extension is super uptight. And with that goes in hand with the dead hang, stretches out the spine, if people in modern day society were just to incorporate these two movements and figure out and solve all of their shoulder issues, would allow them to do any type of dip they wanted or do any type of overhead or behind the neck press without pain and not have to cry to Athlete Next saying, don't do this movement, don't do this movement. Like, look at him. That's why he just doesn't do anything. This guy, he doesn't bodybuild. He just makes all these apparent claims based on the average population who doesn't know how to do all lifts and incorporate all movements to really build out a solid shoulder girdle strength. But going back to the pullover, this would build up the rib cage cavity, the serratus anterior, and the underlying muscles which make the chest come out like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno and Franco. Their chests were very poppy and had that like round shape with the inclined barrel chest, and that barrel symmetry was all improved by the pullover. It expands the rib cage, it pushes it out, pushes the chest out. So by forcing to enhance the rib cage box and train that rib cage box specifically, that underlying muscle, which makes all the other muscles strong because you're building up the inner layers, is what also improved their overall strength and mobility, contrary to modern bodybuilders who have very uptight shoulders and you can't see their chest completely. So the old school movements work wonders and improve your longevity in the game because they improve your overall mobility. So this is probably all of the underlying reasons why these old school guys were strong. They focus on calisthenics, they listen to their bodies, they did all movements, they focus on the inner body tendon and ligament strength with a huge emphasis on that. They focus on their musculoskeletal system health. And a lot of these guys in the old school before Golden Era were mostly natural and had a very high rep ranges to improve their cardio rather than just running around, doing for cardio. So yeah, hope this one helps, and I hope you can adapt to your training program and stay natural, folks. Shawnee Boy out.